Welcome to The Explainer. I am absolutely thrilled you're here, because today we're unpacking one of the most universal, relatable, and honestly unavoidable social phenomena in human existence: meeting someone totally new. Think about it. Think about the last time you walked into a crowded room, locked eyes with a complete stranger, and instantly got a vibe from them. You didn't know their name, you didn't know their background, or even their favorite food, but your brain was already working in overdrive, building this complex, complete profile of exactly who they are.
We've all heard the old saying, right? Don't judge a book by its cover. From a super young age, we are taught that it's unfair and just straight up inaccurate to form an impression of someone without getting to know them first. But I'm gonna challenge you on that right now. Look at the question we have here. Take a guess. If we completely strip away what society says we should do and look purely at what our brains actually do, how long does it take to form a lasting impression? Is it a minute? 10 seconds?
Try 0.1 seconds, a tenth of a second. That is the punchline here. Studies actually show that specific trait inferences happen in just 100 milliseconds of exposure to a face. We are biologically hardwired to judge instantly. It's not some kind of moral failing on your part. It's literally a fundamental cognitive process, and it's happening entirely outside of our conscious awareness. No way around it.
Okay, let's dive into this. We're about to take a really cool zoom in, zoom out journey today. Here's our agenda. 1, the speed of first impressions. 2, the brain's evaluation network. 3, central traits and biases. And 4, rethinking your snap judgments. Starting off with section 1, the speed of first impressions. Let's look at the big picture, the macro-level social psychology behind these rapid evaluations, to figure out exactly what our brains are doing in those crucial first fractions of a second. To really get this, we have to talk about a concept coined by the late, brilliant Stanford psychologist Nalini Ambady. It's called thin slicing. Basically, this is our ability to find complex patterns in events based only on super narrow windows, or thin slices, of experience. Ambady proposed that this lightning-fast ability actually evolved as a totally necessary defense mechanism for early humans. I mean, in a primitive world, being able to instantly judge if an approaching stranger was a friend or deadly threat, that was literally a matter of life and death. But what exactly are we slicing when we do this? Well, it's a ton of different cues. We're rapidly processing nonverbal behaviors, like are they standing stiffly or using open-handed gestures? We look at eye contact, facial expressions, the tone and pitch of their voice, physical attractiveness, and yeah, even in today's world, digital attributes like photos and bios on a dating or social profile. And the accuracy is wild. Research shows that college students rating completely silent video clips of teachers, clips cut down to just 2 to 6 seconds, mirrored the exact same effectiveness ratings given by students who sat in that teacher's class for an entire semester. Researchers have even successfully predicted U.S. congressional election outcomes based solely on split-second inferences voters made from the candidates' faces.
But you know, the sheer speed isn't the only mind-blowing part. It's the stubborn persistence of it all. Impressions formed in fractions of a second can persist for months. Once that thin-sliced judgment locks into place, it is incredibly resistant to contradictory evidence. You could literally see proof to the contrary, and your brain goes, nope, sticking with my first gut feeling. And that is exactly why this psychological phenomenon matters so much in our day-to-day lives.
Which brings us to section 2, the brain's evaluation network. Let's zoom all the way in now. What is physically happening inside our heads when we make these rapid judgments? To satisfy our intellectual curiosity here, we're going to look at a fascinating fMRI study conducted by Daniela Schiller and her colleagues at New York University.
And this brilliantly illustrates how subjects were evaluated. To see the brain forming an impression in real time, the researchers created what they called the difference in evaluation procedure. So, while hanging out inside an fMRI machine, subjects were shown a profile of a person, just a face, alongside 6 descriptive sentences. 3 were positive, like he excused the new team member's error, and 3 were negative, like he told the student that he just wasn't smart enough.
Let's break down the chronological phases of this procedure, because it's pretty straightforward. First up, the encoding phase. That's where the subject just reads the descriptive traits. Then, an interval phase, a 12-second pause where they just stared at the person's face, nothing else. Finally, the evaluation phase, where the subject rated their overall impression of the person on an 8-point scale, going from "I really don't like him" to "I like him."
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is what actually lights up. 2 key areas go off like fireworks: the amygdala and the posterior cingulate cortex, or PCC.
These are areas deeply, deeply tied to emotion, valuation, and processing things that are motivationally important to us. But here's the kicker. They didn't just light up randomly. The researchers found that these regions activated significantly stronger when the subjects were encoding social information that was subjective and directly relevant to them.
Which brings us to a massive revelation about the difference in evaluation effect. The brain basically acts as a custom evaluation network. Think about it. If a subject ended up disliking the profile, their amygdala and PCC were firing wildly while reading the negative sentences. But if they ended up liking the person, those exact same regions fired off during the positive sentences. The brain lights up based on what we personally care about, our own subjective values, rather than just passively absorbing objective facts.
All right, zooming back out to the societal implications with Section 3, central traits and biases. Because our neural system is hardwired to pick and choose what information is valuable based on our own personal meaning, it leaves us hugely vulnerable to cognitive biases. Let's look at the foundational work of social psychologist Solomon Asch from way back in 1946. Asch presented people with identical lists of personality traits describing a fictional person, with literally just one word swapped out. One group saw the word warm, and the other group saw the word cold. The group who read warm formed these glowing impressions. They perceived the person as generous, happy, sociable, but the group who read cold, overwhelmingly negative impressions across the board. So the crucial point is that individual traits don't just add up independently, they interact. Swapping out one single central trait completely changes your entire perception of someone.
Which perfectly tees up a very famous cognitive error you've probably heard of, the halo effect. This happens when one outstanding positive trait completely colors your judgment of totally unrelated characteristics. And the most common trigger? Physical attractiveness. Studies consistently show that physically attractive people are subconsciously assumed to be smarter, more capable, and healthier. And this has heavy real-world consequences. Because of the halo effect, teachers have been known to give attractive students higher grades, and attractive defendants literally often receive less harsh sentences in court. So wow.
And then you mix the halo effect with the primacy effect. This is the tendency for whatever information you encounter first to carry vastly more weight than what comes later. If your initial thin slice impression of someone is positive, that impression acts as a massive perceptual filter. It's like an anchor. Any negative information you learn about them later just gets absorbed or explained away, making first impressions incredibly difficult to undo.
Let's move to and see how this builds into Section 4, rethinking your snap judgments. Now that we understand the psychological and neurological research, how can we use this as a tool to actually overcome our own cognitive blind spots?
Well, we have to start by acknowledging our vulnerabilities, right? As we've learned, our social intuition isn't perfect. The halo effect distorts our reality based on physical attractiveness. We also know that specific biological cues, like having a baby face, round features, large eyes, falsely signal trustworthiness to our brains. We are deeply anchored to initial data by the primacy effect. And once our rapid-fire amygdala and PCC have helped us form that initial summary score of a person, confirmation bias kicks in, causing us to actively seek out facts that prove our gut feeling right and literally ignore facts that prove us wrong.
The harsh truth? We cannot stop our brains from thin slicing. That 0.1 second evolutionary defense mechanism is baked right into our biology. However, we can move to accurate, attribute-based processing if we apply deliberate effort and genuine motivation. We have to actively choose to look past the first impression. When you meet someone and instantly feel a strong aversion or a strong affinity, just pause, catch yourself, and ask, am I reacting to a single central trait? Is this the halo effect at play?
Understanding how impression formation works doesn't automatically make us immune to these biases, for sure, but it does give us a much clearer picture of what's happening under the hood. So I want to leave you with this provocative thought. The next time you meet someone new, and your brain hands you a complete profile of exactly who they are in 1/10 of a second, what will you do differently? Will you just accept that thin slice, or will you take a breath and look deeper? Thank you so much for exploring the science of snap judgments with me on this explainer. Until next time, keep learning and keep questioning those first impressions.